Hello and welcome to the show. We are here today on Forza Horizon 4 with another showdown. You see, the 90s brought us many excellent vehicles. I mean, at the top end you have things like the McLaren F1 that smashed all the speed records and held them for considerably long time. I mean, also we had the EB110, the XJ220, were all in the 90s as well. You have the GT1 road cars. There's a crazy selection of incredibly fast road cars out there. But today we're not going to be focusing on that end of the spectrum, if you like, because while there were a great selection of those sort of vehicles, there was also a huge choice of sports cars. I say more entry-level sports cars, but things like the E30 M3, the Mercedes 190e. You were absolutely spoilt for choice if you wanted something that was a little bit fast, well, quite a bit fast really for the era, and, you know, vaguely practical as well. You know, these were usable sports cars. In fact, there were so many that there's only 12 slots in a Forza lobby, so we could only use 12 of them. There's some interesting, I say slightly more oddballs, but we have more of these vehicles to play around with in Horizon 4 than we have had in previous Forza games. So we've got cars like the Nissan Pulsar, which I love, and I was very excited to have a go with this one. So naturally, we were going to set out to find what would be the fastest of these 90s sports cars. So, for our first race with these 90s cars, we come to the Prince's Street Garden Circuit. Now, I'm starting fairly well up. We probably will be leading by turn 1, if I'm honest with you. The Pulsar is likely to be pretty quick. I'm not going to lie to you here. The Pulsar is likely to be one of the favourites, perhaps, going into this. I do love the little car. We're going to hopefully try and do well with it. Yeah, I got all-wheel drive. I can launch pretty well. With things to watch out for. Celica's all-wheel drive. The GTO technically has the highest PI here. However, it is very heavy. All-wheel drive and a good chunk of power, but it is quite heavy. We are hopefully going to launch past some of these cars towards the first corner. I mean, the Pulsar shoots off the line. It's much quicker than the likes of the Celica and so on. Oh, okay. Little bit late on the brakes from me there. Just a smidge late on the brakes. All of that. I've forgotten I've not been driving normal road cars for a while. We're all in. It's just the sad ghosty mode of Horizon 4 that we're all going to be sat in through here. We should duck underneath that Volvo, no trouble. Here we go to the inside of the M3. Are we going to be able to take that position away from the BMW before the next corner? Yes, we will. Okay, Celica leads the way from Pulsar. Then we have the BMW. Carefully does it through these next couple of corners. Almost lost the back end massively in the little Nissan. It's all-wheel drive, but it doesn't have slide around if you want it to. The 190 is up to 4th place by the looks of it, battling with 850R. Don't know where the GTO is. We have a really good run, but I hate trying to overtake on the inside of this final corner. Oh, that was ambitious. I went for the spectacular and didn't quite pay off in all of that. I didn't really want to go to the inside. I hate trying to go to the inside through that corner. It just doesn't really ever work. Outside is brave at that turn. I thought maybe I'd have the grip to outmaneuver the Celica. Sadly, I did not. I think we've got the quickest car here, if I'm honest with you. When we lost the place to the M3, we're almost immediately back in place to pounce. We have a look at the inside. Celica's struggling massively with understeer. I'm going to miss a checkpoint if I stick to that line because they're busy fighting one another. That's fine. We'll bide our time. The GTO has got to 4th. GTO, I might have to be a little bit... I think I'll outturn it. It's likely to be quite quick accelerating. It's just the weight. I love the GTO. It's a great car. But in Forza, it's always struggles to be particularly quick in some ways. Are we going to be able to go around the outside? I don't want to remember the outside of the Celica again. This time we might actually have the run. We might have the overlap. We're going to go to the inside of the final corner. There's a little bit of leaning. This time we are through. We are up a position. The GTO can battle with that Celica now. We may well... The M3 is doing good. It's up there representing the two-wheel drive cars. Oh dear. Can't get turn 1 right. I feel like I can get away with... so much more in turn 1 than I actually can. Everywhere else I'm fine. Everywhere else I got the car figured out, basically. But turn 1, I just can't quite get the braking and the turning point right. Here we go. We've got a good run again on the BMW. Are we going to have a look down the end? I mean, we might even get the pass done before we even get to the corner. That's kind of the idea. If we can manage to make this work, it's going to be the inside through here. Oh, can I pull it up in time for the next part? Yes, we can. The BMW is going to want to try and cut back underneath on the exit. It is not going to be close enough to make that happen. I mean, we're flat out through there in the Pulsar. I think now we've got ourselves to the front of the pack here in the little Nissan, and I suspect we're going to drive with a big gap between the top four and the rest of the field. Admittedly, the rest of the field looks like they're having a big fight. It looks like there's a 190E versus an RX-7 going on in the background. Still not got turn one right. Every bloody time I'm struggling with this first corner. Oh, we've got to give the BMW some space through there. If I get turn one right, we're just going to go vanish off into the distance of this. BMW is never going to stop. Well, it stops and keeps out of the wall, but it's not going to... It's going to lose a heap of time on the exit. That'll put us back past into the lead. Let's not piss around this lap. I'm going to eventually get that turn one correct. And then they will get fast. I say we'll get fastest lap. I think we're probably the fastest lap so far. Here we go. We just got so much more grip than everything around. And the Pulsar, I mean, with 220 odd horsepower, very, very light, all-wheel drive. I mean, that's your ideal... Certainly Forza terms, that's your ideal build almost to work almost everywhere. Not guaranteed completely everywhere, but still it is going well for the Pulsar. Right, turn one. Let's not piss this one up entirely this time around, shall we? That's more like it. I guess we're just driving higher grip cars of late. Don't know why. My brain is struggling with that concept. Yeah, I feel like I'm not driving this car very well here, and we're still probably the quickest car on the track. We have the BMW has gradually put up a good fight. Clark's M3 put up a really good fight. Oh, you know, credit where credit is due and all that. It's still fighting away with Longbow. I just think these three all-wheel drives are just a little bit too quick. I'm not sure they're quick because of the all-wheel drive. In this class, traction isn't the biggest concern necessarily. Pulsar's quick just because it's very, very small and light. Surprised to see the silly... I'm kind of surprised to see some of the cars further back. Perhaps not a little bit... Well, say some of the cars further back like the RX-7 and 190E. I guess they are a bit lower in PI and all that. And they're having their own big battle somewhere. Have we got... it's still the battle between the M3. You might see a rear-wheel drive car on the podium. You might see one of the two-wheel drives make it there. I think the Eclipse we've got in this is front-wheel drive. The rest are rear or all-wheel drive. The Pulsar is lovely. There is absolutely no doubt about it here. Pulsar is a fantastic little car to drive. The Celica is... I mean, the Celica is trying to keep the Nissan honest, but it really is about the only thing here. Certainly at this track, it's the only thing that's even remotely close to keeping the Pulsar honest. We are going to run away from that Celica on this final lap. As long as I don't do anything too stupid through these next couple of corners, we will take home a victory in race number one. Just don't hit the buildings on the outside. We don't. The Celica, I mean, we're probably getting on for a 3/4 of a second a lap quicker than that Celica if I have a good, maybe even a second a lap quicker than that Toyota. It is a monster. In the end, Clark ended up third by the looks of it with the BMW. We lost sight of the GTO. I don't know if something happened to that car. Oh, 102.7. I was about right in terms of my time per lap. Yeah, the M3 gets third and that is the highest place the rear-wheel drives. The RX-7 does beat out the 190E in the end for that fifth position. The Sylvia's up in seventh ahead of the Corrado, Volvo, XJS, Eclipse, and the Escort down at the back. The Escort got a half-decent lap time, so I wonder if I've been snared a bit in traffic. Very, very close finish between the Corrado and the Volvo by the looks of it there. 0.4 of a second in that one. Pulsar is bloody fast, I'll say that much. I'm impressed. So, for our second race, we have come to the Bambara Coast Circuit, and, well, I mean, I'm hoping Pulsar's going to go pretty quickly. We start further down the field. That's, you know, fair. In fact, we actually got quite a lot of the faster cars further down the back. Me, the M3, the Celica. The XJS is going to have a tall order. I mean, this is a little bit of a different track to the previous one. A couple of long straights. This is a circuit that generally more power-orientated cars are going to work at. If they're going to work at somewhere, this is a track where those cars are going to work. We know we're going to be quick off the line here. There's no doubt about it. We shoot ourselves up a couple of rows before we get towards the first corner. But we also know we've got a lot of grip in this at the end of the day. It's ridiculously fast, this thing. It's just shot its way through. I mean, we're up to 4th already. We're going to run out of grip a little bit through there. We'll go back down a gear. The GTO might be a difficult thing to pass. We'll have to wait and see. Oh, we're on a smidge wide. I'd expect the likes of the RX-7 to outhandle me, to be honest with you. Is the Pulsar really going to outdrag everything as well? Outlaunches everything because it's lighter than all the other all-wheel drive cars? Surely not. Yeah, okay, it's gone. The Pulsar is an absolute monster of a car, although this is going to be not really where I want to be. Oh, that's the wrong gear as well. Okay, first gear, not what we wanted quite through there. We're going to lose a few positions, more from my own incompetence than anything else. Yeah, first gear is not what we want. So, we are pretty much the fastest car at a straight line, I think, out here. Certainly, in terms of usable straight line speed, we beat everything. Maybe ultimate top end, the GTO would beat us, maybe the Celica. M3's fairly quick as well down these straights. Escort runs out of puff down here. It's actually going to get caught on a tight line and be a little bit slow through that. Looks like we're going to end up with a similar top 4 again. We're staring at the back of a BMW through these next couple of corners. Actually have a lift and wait a little bit. Oh, almost got into the outside wall. We are through there. Fine though, no problems. Okay, let's go chase down an M3. I think the GTO is struggling with his acceleration a little bit. There's just so much car to accelerate forward. And I say that in relative terms, you know. I'm not so confident of the brakes of this car, only because I've got myself in trouble a little bit. I think it does. I think I probably could have dived on the BMW. I mean, I'm kind of at the point where I think I've got the quick enough car that I don't even have to take. If it's a slightly risky dive, I don't need to take it. There's no need for me to do that in the Pulsar because I think we're quick enough. And we've got more than enough laps to make something happen here. So we go to the outside of the M3. The GTO kind of neutralises us a little bit down here. The BMW realises it's not going to be able to do all that much. I was a little slow through turn 1. I wasn't quite sure if the BMW was going to have a go or not, so we left sort of space for a little bit wide of the apex. Ooh, I made a mess of that corner. Took a couple of bites at turning in. Okay, now we've just got to go chase down the GTO over the remainder of this race. The XJS has either missed a checkpoint or had a torrent. I mean, it's not likely to... Let's face it, the big Jag is not necessarily the greatest of cars. It's kind of cool, but in this field it is being a little bit outclassed by, well, just about everything. Gearbox won't help whatsoever with that terrible 3-speed. Here we go around these final corners. We can just turn so much tighter than the GTO through any of these corners, and we can outrun it onto the back straight. Now, Longbow is going to make it difficult for us, and we know that's probably the closest to us in terms of top end. Definitely the closest to us in terms of top end. We've dropped the BMW and the Celica around here. Yeah, so it kind of matches us with about 120. Can I hold it around the outside at turn 1? Almost. We almost did. Not quite good enough. Now, Longbow is going to have to defend. If Longbow wants this, Longbow's going to get the win. It is going to be from defending like crazy as we set this up with a good run. Can we outbrake that car? Oh, we have a go. No. First gear doesn't work through there, got to remember that. And now we've got to be a little bit careful here. If we keep doing this, we will bring the Celica and the M3 potentially back into the fight. We can actually see how much the GTO is understeering through all of this. We are now to the outside once. Well, I knew Lombo was going to move across. There's almost don't bother fighting too much on that one. Oh, the GTO has just got the grip. All right, got to make something happen. This lap now. There's no more time. This one around, we managed to work our way to the inside as we run down the start-finish straight. Clark is still battling away, so the M3 is still putting on a good fight. The Escort's up in 5th, actually, ahead of the Sylvia, I think. There's a massive fight going on back. There's kind of two groups almost. You've got the front 4, that depending on the track, maybe varies a little bit. By the looks of it, the Pulsar is proving to be pretty unstoppable at the moment. Then you've got a secondary group going on. This time, oh, I think Longbow may have missed the checkpoint. I think there was some desync. I Now, I have a sneaky suspicion on Longbow's screen they were a lot further alongside me. On my screen there was no car there when I turned in. I have a sneaky suspicion there might have been some Forza desync going on in that one, because that was, yeah, well behind me. Either that or Longbow just tried to be too greedy and misjudged it. Not quite sure which way it went on that one as we round the final corner. The Pulsar is going to run to the finish line. It is going to take, I mean, it's GTO, the toughest car around here to pass. It is probably the closest matched at this circuit to the Nissan. But again, I think the Nissan is that bit quicker than just about. I mean, we're looking at the gaps going on further back, and this absolutely flew away from everybody. Lap time, we are the only car in the 106, 106.9. The M3 at 107.5, not too bad whatsoever. You know, it's good going for the rear-wheel drive machine. Longbow was a bit unlucky. Yeah, Longbow's 107.1. So, admittedly, I don't think we had a clean lap in all of that. It's a little closer around this circuit, but yeah, that Pulsar is pretty damn mighty indeed. Well, so far has been so good for the Pulsar. Can it continue that when we go to the drag strip? I know it's going to launch very well. It's probably going to have the best launch of all. I'm not sure whether the likes of the GTO or the Celica will be able to catch by the end of it. The Jag's kind of got some top speed, but it's going to be so slow off the line. I don't think this is a long enough drag strip for that to come really into play. I think that the Pulsar is probably going to launch pretty damn quickly. We'll have to see. As I said, it's the GTO and the Celica that we are most concerned about. We are between the Volvo and the Eclipse. It's so quick, the Pulsar, compared to the rest of them. We've got the Celica on our left-hand side. We've got the GTO on our right over there. We're actually pulling away from that GTO. I was expecting the GTO to start reeling us back in. It has got more power than we do. There's nothing that's going to touch the Pulsar down here. Nissan's going to take a comfortable victory in the end. I think the Celica would get second. Let's have a look at the results. Indeed it is. Pulsar takes victory. Celica second ahead of the GTO. M3 is fourth. Best of the rest of the 190. Sylvia is up in sixth ahead of the Jag. The RX-7 Eclipse, Volvo. The Escort down in 11th. It just doesn't really have the straight line speed. And the Corrado, not a straight line speed car. So there's a dead heat between the 190 and the Sylvia. That's the first time we've seen that one. We move next to the good old, well, normally it'd be a 0 to 100 to 0. The problem is these cars don't get to 100 very easily in the space. So we're doing 0 to 60 to 0 instead. The Pulsar will go first and set the benchmark. In all honesty, not my finest run that we have ever done. The GTO up next would get on the brakes. Similar, very similar, but not quite able to beat that of the Pulsar. Celica would be setting off next. We knew the GT4 might be a threat, a challenge, and sure enough, for the first time the Pulsar has been beaten. It's only by a very small amount, but the Pulsar is not going to be able to win this round. We then have the Eclipse that has gone for a little bit further down the road. And it's not terrible, not completely terrible for the car, but it's a little bit further into the distance. Up next we have got the Escort. So it has the advantage of all-wheel drive launch, but it just doesn't have the speed of the vehicles around. It's just not got the acceleration of a bunch of these cars. The 190, not 190, sorry, the E30 has been doing very well. Been best of the two-wheel drives pretty much consistently throughout all of this. It's a good showing. Not quite as good as the all-wheel drive cars, but still not too bad. The Jag has a huge amount of wobbling going down. That's actually a very good run from the Jag. That's a surprise and a half right there. I mean, as I said, it has got power and the gearing might help it a little bit. In fact, that's another very, very good run. Surprising. Sylvia is going to be the best of the two-wheel drive. So I was surprised by the Jag. That Sylvia's actually done very well down here. 190E is, oh, not 190, sorry, 850R is going to go next, and that is a little bit further down the road from everybody else. We know the Volvo's struggling a little bit for its straight line speed. RX-7, straight line speed, not the Mazda's strong point here. Not terrible though. I guess it's, you know, it's lighter than some of the competition around it. Now we've got that 190. Is it going to be able to beat its good old rival, the BMW? No, not quite. It's not a terrible run from the Mercedes, but it's not as good as the M3. And then we have the Corrado that doesn't really do very well here. We were kind of expecting the Volkswagen to struggle a little bit. Yeah, both Volkswagen and Volvo, the two front-wheel drives, just don't have the straight line speed. Not terrible to drive, but don't have the straight line speed. So on to the flyby, if you like. Celica would take victory from the Pulsar. I'm annoyed I didn't have a perfect run, but it was a very, very good run from that Toyota. They are close between them. It would be the GTO that would just beat out the Silvia, but that's a hell of a performance from the Nissan. We weren't expecting that at all in this one. We really, really weren't expecting that. We then have an incredibly, incredibly close finish between the Jag and the BMW. Now, this is actually very, very difficult to show. To kind of, it's been difficult to get perfectly lined up with the drone mode, with, well, the way everything is. However, it is going to go to the Jag. Actually, after filming this, go back and took a whole load of angles just to check. It is going to go to the Jag, but it's so super close between the pair of them. Then we have the 190e, then the RX-7. Little bit of a gap when we find the Eclipse. The Eclipse would beat the Escort Cosworth, however, still go a little bit further down. Then we find the 850R. And just a smidge further along is the Corrado. It's not that much further than the Volvo, but yeah, the two front-wheel drives did struggle a little bit with the straight line speed test. So it is on to the results table. I mean, it's no surprise what is at the top here. The Pulsar wins it very nearly, and perhaps could have and should have got a clean sweep of everything other than a poor run in the North. Well, say relatively poor. The Celica keeps it honest at the end of the day. The Celica would come in second ahead of the M3. The GTO full. You know, those two were very, very close in all this, and the M3 is the best of the two-wheel drives. The Silvia would get best of the rest ahead of the 190e by virtue, well, have the same points by virtue of having a higher finishing position in that 0 to 60 to 0, you know, getting a fourth place in that. Then we have the RX-7 that would beat the XJS. The Jag and the two clawed some points back with the straight line speed stuff, especially, again, 0 to 60 is 0. The Escort would take 9th. Now, we actually have a complete tie between the Eclipse and the Volvo. Same points, and if I go back on their finishing positions in each event, they have an identical sort of number of finishing positions. So it's a complete tie between the Eclipse and the 850R. We've never had that before when doing one of these showdowns. We then have the Corrado at the bottom. While it's not bad through the corners, I quite like the Corrado. In this field, it's just not quite quick enough. It's not quick enough in a straight line, not by a long shot. And while, yeah, not terrible in the corners, it's just not as fast as the vehicles that it is racing around. Now, to finish off, we decided to have a little bit of fun. As I said, we did a 0 to 60 to 0, rather than the normal 0 to 100 to 0, by virtue of, well, these cars they're quick, but they're not crazy fast, and the drag strip here has limited space. And, well, 0 to 100 to 0 is really pushing it, shall we say, with using the limited amount of space that we have. So, decided for a little bit of fun, it wasn't going to count as such, because it's going to be a bit unscientific. We were going to run the cars, and basically, if you ended up off of the runway, you got disqualified, and see what happened with the rest of them, pretty much. So it's still, you know, the same acceleration and braking test, and we kind of ran this in order of where we expected the vehicles to be stopping, or roughly where we expected them to be stopping. So the faster cars, the better cars were going to go first. The GTO, still close to the Pulsar, much as we saw. I mean, the gaps are perhaps, well, you perhaps expect them to be a little bit bigger by virtue of higher speeds and everything. But still, it's very close between the Pulsar and the GTO. Now, I was worried about the Celica. I knew this was probably the biggest threat that I had in this one. The Celica is on the brakes. This time, it goes the other way around. The Celica did bog down a little bit off the line. I locked my brakes a little bit when getting stopped. So, neither of us had quite the perfect run. But this time around, the Pulsar would take it. We then have the Silvia that had really, really surprised all of us in that previous round. That would come running down here. We were expecting this one here as well to be able to make it and get stopped on the runway. It gets on the brakes this time around, similar sort of showing as we saw from previous. It just goes a little bit further along than the GTO. We then move on to the German cars. The Mercedes, the 190e, that would head next. Now, again, we were expecting the Mercedes to kind of be close with all of this lot, and sure enough, actually a very, very good run from the Merc. It slots in this time, beating the Silvia. Doesn't quite beat the GTO. Sorry, why do I get all this 190? I don't know why. The BMW, the E30, that would run next. But again, we were expecting this one to make it. It had been, you know, the best of the two-wheel drives. The only thing really bringing the fight to the all-wheel drive machinery. It gets on the brakes, and it is a good run from the BMW. It actually beats the GTO in this one. That's the third place currently for that M3. Now, the Jag we knew was a little bit more dubious on its ability to... It could get to 100, but it's, you know, the brakes aren't great on this car. It's not quite as quick accelerating or launching as it likes the all-wheel drive cars. So the Jag comes barreling down here. You see it dive as it gets on the brakes, not quite on the drag strip. It does get stopped. It's close. It's close, but not quite for the Jaguar. Then we moved on to the cars that we knew were going to struggle here. We knew that these vehicles were going to have a tough time. The RX-7, while a wonderful car, did not quite have the straight line speed in this one. Certainly not of some of the other vehicles that we had racing here, so this was always likely to struggle, and sure enough, it's actually not on the brakes. I think it hits the brakes just as it leaves the end of the drag strip, and, well, that's a long way into the scenery. That's where the rest of us are, and the RX-7 is somewhere over there. You can see where this is going, shall we say. So the Escort Cosworth, that would run next. Again, it's a little bit down pat, a little bit of lag with this one. So slightly confused with the old drone mode. It's still not on the brakes, it's still not on the brakes, it's still not on the brakes. There it's on the brakes. It's going to come to... It does actually do a fairly good job of getting stopped, considering it's bouncing around, it's on the grass and everything. But that wasn't on the brakes until... I mean, it was well off the runway, I think, by that point. The Eclipse, that would head out next. I mean, this hadn't done too terribly. It just hadn't... Nothing massively spectacular. Again, weren't expecting this one to be getting stopped. It's still not on the brakes as it goes past everybody. It's still trying to get some speed. It does finally get on the brakes. The Eclipse, for a first in one of these showdowns, the Eclipse, it found a way to stop. Yes, it did find a tree. It's not the most scientific of results, if I'm honest with you, but also it's not really working with these. The Volvo, that would go up next. Again, another car. I love the 850R. It's a brilliant vehicle, but in this field, it did not quite have enough speed. Its top end is not enough. It's still going as we leave the the drag strip. It does finally get on the brakes. They got the brakes in the air through all of that. It's a long way into the field. And the Corrado, well, we were half expecting that to make its way to Ambleside. If I'm honest, we knew this struggled with its top end. We knew this was not going to go well for the Volkswagen. It was going to be funny to see how far it would launch itself into the scenery, because again, I mean, the other cars have got to 100 and stopped, and this thing it's still accelerating. I think it said about 95 miles an hour when it left the runway. I mean, runway, drag strip, whatever. It does get on the brakes. It shoots off into the distance, and there we go. Okay, the Eclipse had a little bit of cheaty help by accident in it. There was a tree there. Yeah, quite a spread. Also, it's a little bit skewed because they fall off and they get airtime. It's not, I say, not the most scientific test, but it was, yeah, quite entertaining watching all the vehicles scoot off into the distance. And there we have the main cluster. Over there is scattered remains of the rest of them. But yeah, the main little cluster was actually quite close between this whole big bunch of vehicles. Not bad, considering they're all struggling a little bit to get to the speed in this space. I thought we might have seen a bigger spread out, but actually no, this lot here was not too bad at all. And it was another win for the Pulsar. As far as conclusions go, I mean, it's the Pulsar is the fastest car here by quite a margin, really. The Celica could keep it honest, the GTO could keep it honest, but there's only to an extent. Really, the Pulsar was, in this field, pretty much untouchable. As I said, if I'd had a cleaner 0-60 to 0, I think it could probably and would normally end up beating the Celica. It's bloody quick. I mean, it is ideal, really, for Forza. It's small, light, all-wheel drive. Hatchback, it's very, very quick. It's very quick indeed. At times, I can struggle to get it turned in a little bit, but on the most part, it beats everything that is here. So the Pulsar is very, very clearly the winner. The Celica would take a second place, and I think a fairly clear second place as well. Well, yes, the GTO, at the right circuit, the GTO could give the Pulsar maybe a little bit of trouble. On the most part, it would be the Celica that would be closest, and with the drag races and so on, the Celica was the closest to the Pulsar, but it really was playing second fiddle on the most part to that Nissan. Said the GTO did pretty well in third place as well. You know, fourth place. Sorry, that's a big sort of heavy all-wheel drive car. Much heavier than the likes of the Pulsar. And it could put up a little bit of a fight, but at the end of the day, it just couldn't quite match these two. I say perhaps not quite necessarily the results that I knew the Pulsar was going to be quick. I didn't expect it to be as fast over everything as it was. As far as the two-wheel drive cars go, the M3 would be the best of that lot by a considerable margin. It really was a top four, and then the rest of the pack. Okay. the M3, maybe not quite up there with the Pulsar, but it could certainly fight up there. It could fight with the GTO at the right sort of tracks. So definitely the best of the two-wheel drives would go to the BMW. Perhaps one of the most impressive vehicles for me, and this was a Sylvia. I didn't really expect it to do anything. I didn't really expect much from it. It was going to be a sort of generic sports car, to sort of sit, say, in the lower part of the table, but it ended up in 5th by virtue of some pretty damn good drag racing performances and 060 and all of that, and it still scored some solid points in the races. The 190E was also up there, the RX-7. There's a good sort of midfield battle between all of these vehicles, but it very much was top 4 and then 5th and back. You know, the top 4 were just in that little bit different league. But there we go. It was good fun. It was interesting. The 0 to 100 to 0 was quite hilarious, watching cars shoot off into the distance. Yeah, I enjoyed this showdown very much. That, though, is going to be it from me. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.